Can the Atlanta Braves really compete for a World Series next year if they don't get a big bat this offseason? I'll answer that question and many more on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at shortstop ball. Check out the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves, where you can submit questions just like a bunch of you did for today's mailbag episode. Follow us on Instagram too at Locked On Braves there, and on YouTube. Please do me a quick favor. Stop what you're doing. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It doesn't cost you a thing. Helps me out a ton when you do that. And you can also hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. A lot of the comments on yesterday's podcast were simply just to help out the algorithm, and I really do appreciate you. That's one way that you can help support us here on the channel. You can also help us out on the audio side too. Just leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is that you get your podcast. I do appreciate all your support here at Locked On Braves, making us your first listen of every day. And big shout out to all my everydayers out there. Some of you commenting, it's my third off season going through with you. Some of you commenting, I've been here since the beginning. I love hearing those, love reading those comments. So thank you so much for putting those in there. It is our weekly mailbag episode. I got about 15 questions. That's not true. One of them was a run-on question, so we really got about 12. But we got several questions to get to, and as usual, there'll be a variety of questions. A lot of them still having to do with the shortstop position, which we had a lot of questions on that last Friday, and I'm sure we'll continue to have a lot of questions on that until we get some sort of decision on Ha-Seong Kim. But we'll have some questions on those. One big overarching question, though, what I want to get into is, can the Atlanta Braves win next year if they do not acquire a big bat this offseason? That does not include Ha-Seong Kim. As I said last week and on previous podcasts, that cannot be your big bat for the offseason. So we'll get to those questions today. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. I'm going to jump right into the questions here as usual, just kind of scrolling down as they come in. Caleb Cook says, who is more likely to be with the Braves next season, Ha-Seong Kim as a starting shortstop or Ron Washington as the third base coach? I am hoping for both. I'm hoping for both as well. Would love to have Ron back. Wash back in the system in some capacity, whether that's on the field as a third base coach or just in the dugout as a bench coach, advisor, whatever the case may be. Would love to get Wash back in the system. Would also love to have Ha-Seong Kim, just because I think he's probably the best option, best affordable option that you're going to get this offseason. So I do hope that it's both of them. And it's a good question. I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below, or if you're here with me live, what do you think? Which one is more likely? Again, we talked yesterday about Ozzie and Michael, and I posed the question, which one is more likely to bounce back next year? And as I said in there, I'm hopeful that both of them do, just like I'm hopeful both of these guys are with the Braves next year. But let me know which one you think is more likely. I'm going to say Ha-Seong Kim, just because Braves already have some level of control. At least, he's technically still on the team. The Braves sent him a happy birthday wish on social media today. So he's still, I guess, technically kind of with the team. So I'm going to give him the edge. If that weren't the case, I'd probably say Wash. I don't know what Wash wants to do. There's a lot of managerial openings. I don't know if he still wants to try and be a manager. I know he said when he was with the Angels that he still wanted to try to manage, and them dismissing him wasn't necessarily because of the health issues. I think personally for Wash, and he obviously knows his medical symptoms better than I do, I think it's probably time to just step back and take a coaching role, bench role, something like that. And if that's the case, if he's willing to step back and, take some sort of other coaching role on the staff, maybe not even on the field, then I think there's a good chance he comes back to the Braves. Maybe this is just bias and how much we love Wash. I feel like there's a personal connection there between Wash and the Braves, that would be the place that if he were going to settle down and ride off into the sunset, that's where he would want to do it. But maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. And it also kind of depends on who the new manager is going to be. So I think I'm going to answer Ha-Seong Kim, but I think this is a very It's a very much a toss-up. And like I said, hopefully both of them. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. And it's not necessarily which one you won, but which one do you think will be back? Which one is more likely to be with the Braves next year? All right, here's Corey Slovic's 3-part question here. It says, okay, following my dot connecting here, Harris needs to be included in the DH outfield because of his physical toll in center field, probably contributing to him not meeting his offensive ceiling. So the outfielder they add needs to be able to play center field. So your late game pinch hitter is likely to be either one of the catchers or specialty bat they stash on the bench. So your defensive replacement pinch run guy needs to be able to play pretty much everywhere on the field. So for those reasons, this is comment number 3, plus he's a switch hitter, plus he's going to be dirt cheap. I think Vidal Brujan gets tendered a contract and makes the team. He isn't just a shortstop. He can literally play 7 positions pretty well. I haven't seen enough of Brujan to say one way or the other that he's a positive in center field. I know he can play it. I know he can do it. And on a short-term basis, maybe that's fine. I will say this. I think Vidal Brujan's spot on the roster is kind of tied into what happens at shortstop. If Ha-Seong Kim opts out and the Braves don't have an actual replacement at shortstop, then they have to keep Nick Allen around. If Ha-Seong Kim stays, I feel like there's no need for Nick Allen on the roster if Ha-Seong Kim stays. And at that point, then I think Brujan becomes your more valuable bench player who can back up short, all over the infield and outfield, as you mentioned. So I think Brujan's status is really going to be dependent on what happens at the shortstop position. Because if you can't find a replacement there, then you kind of need to keep Nick Allen around. But if you do, then I don't see a need for Allen on the roster other than a defensive replacement. And I just don't think that's all that valuable. So I agree with you. I think having Brujan or somebody like that on your bench that, can hit from both sides, can be a good pinch runner, and can also fill in a bunch of spots, I think is very valuable, more than a Nick Allen who can fill in at, can be a defensive replacement at short and second, which is great, but he's not even really a good pinch runner. We saw him steal this year. He had as much trouble as anybody stealing bases. Obviously not a good pinch hitter. So I think it would be more valuable to have that guy on the bench who can do all of those things, can be a defensive replacement or at least a replacement, maybe can hit a little bit. I'm not saying Brujan is a much better bat than Allen, but can also handle the outfield. So I do agree in the sense, Corey, that I think Brujan could be a valuable piece, especially if you keep Brujan and you keep Eli White. And those aren't the most fascinating names to have on your bench, but having those two guys for in-game replacements. If something were to happen to Michael Harris, I don't want Vidal Brujan being my center fielder for months stretches at a time. At that point, you got to find an actual replacement, starter level replacement. I don't think Vidal Brujan or Eli White are starter level players, but they're good in-game players in that if you have to pinch hit for a certain spot, Brujan can fill in. You need a pinch runner, Brujan or Eli White can fill in. I think they're good in-game pieces to have on your bench. They're not necessarily guys that can fill in for injured players for a long period of time. Hope that kind of all makes sense, but I do agree with you. I think Brujan could be a good fit for what you need as one of your bench players, but I think it is going to be dependent on what happens at the shortstop spot. Now, obviously, even if Ha-Seong Kim doesn't come back and Nick Allen's your shortstop, there's still room for Brujan, on the bench. But I do think it's kind of tied into that and what they want to do with Nick Allen. Because I guess bringing it full circle and the point that I'm making in my head as I talk here, I don't think there's a need to have Nick Allen and Brujan on your bench, right? So one of those guys has to go if Ha-Seong Kim stays or you get another shortstop. Hayden Harris says, if these were your options for shortstop next season, which would you choose and why? First option is Ha-Seong Kim on a higher AAV short-term deal. The second option is Ezequiel Tovar in a trade with lower AAV and longer control. Geraldo Perdomo, and third option, Geraldo Perdomo in a trade where you give up a top-tier prospect. When I initially read this, my immediate reaction was, give me the guy that just had a 7 F4 season and is still just 25 on a very team-friendly deal and seems to be getting better offensively every year. And so Perdomo seems like the obvious option here because you're potentially finding your shortstop for the next 5 years. And I still think that is the right option. But I think the option to get Kim also makes a lot of sense. Tovar is probably my least favorite of these options because not only are you having to trade assets, you're getting a player who regressed last year. And while I do like the defense, I just don't know. I think he and Anthony Volpe are kind of in similar paths right now at the moment. So for me, I think it's Perdomo's probably the easy answer here. You look at Perdomo's contract, $6.25 million next year, $9.25 after that, $12.25, $14.25. Those are all very affordable numbers. And I don't think the Diamondbacks are trading Perdomo, just to put that out there. I don't even think that's going to be an option. Everything I hear from people I talk to on the Diamondback side, they love Perdomo. He's a Diamondbacks guy. Like, that is just their guy. So I don't think they're going to trade him. So I don't even think that's an option. But, if I were able to pick out of those three, I think Perdomo is the obvious choice with Ha-Seong Kim on a shorter term, high AAV deal as a second choice, then Tovar after that. But good question there. All right, I've only gotten to 3 of these questions so far, so we'll have to pick things up here in a moment. We do have a lot more to get to on today's episode. We'll get back into your questions here next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football, basketball, hockey, baseball, whatever you're watching. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. And right now, there's a special max discount promotion live on the board for the Golden State Warriors versus Los Angeles Lakers game on October 21st. Steph Curry is discounted to only needing more than half a point to win. It's half a point. So, basically you get 1 point. I think that's how it works. And I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. I could do that against the Lakers. So make sure that you check that out. Also, please make sure you check out prizepicks.com/help-center/responsible-gaming for resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in the lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. This will be the final podcast this week here for Locked On Braves. We'll be back next week with 5 more episodes. We'll continue our player recaps and previews for next season, looking on the pitchers. We did a lot of the hitters this last week. We looked at Acuna, Riley, Ozuna. We did look at Iglesias, who's a pitcher, but I wanted to do those two together. And then we did Ozzie and Michael Harris. Next week, we'll switch more to the pitcher side of things. Unless anything breaks on the coaching search, we've gotten next to no news on that so far. But you want to hear some of that, previous weeks really covered the coaching search and options in detail. No real new names have come up at this point. So unless that happens, we'll continue with these player recaps, previews. In the week after that, we'll really get into our offseason preview content. I'll tell you what I think the Braves will do this offseason. I'll tell you what I would do this offseason. I'll talk about the dream scenario for this offseason, player options, all of that, a bunch of stuff coming your way on the podcast. So let's get back into the questions for today, though. Ed Helinsky says, which tool might the Braves use in shaping a roster for next season? A carving knife, a machete, or a scalpel? So I'm not the toolsy person, so I don't know exactly the designation for all of these tools and what they do. I don't think it's going to be a machete because I don't think it's just going to be a complete tear down. I think it's going to be more like a scalpel, I think. If that's used the way that I think it is, I believe it's going to be just a little bit more of fine tuning. I think there's just going to be some little insertions. I think that's what a scalpel does to fix the roster and supplement the roster. I think it's going to be a lot of keeping the core together as is. I don't think there's going to be a huge shakeup foundationally. Another season like we've had the past 2, and then I think that does come. But I think it's going to be more just making some small incisions. Maybe that's the word I was looking for with a scalpel. Making some small incisions here or there to supplement the core is what I think it's going to be more like this offseason. Kathy G says, watching all these kids, in quotes, dominate veteran hitters in the postseason, who's your favorite Braves prospect to come up late and do the same for us next year? I know you've covered this before, but with some of them making late season progress, I wondered who's caught your eye. Thank you. Obviously, I think Giancarlo Lara has the highest potential to do that. But even in the Arizona Fall League right now, and we'll start getting to some Arizona Fall League updates here pretty soon, still just struggling with that command in a reliever role. But he definitely has that ability if he were to progress in that, show a little bit more consistency. And even with the walks that he's had, he's not like he's getting a bunch of runs because he's still really hard to hit. But he is the one that obviously pops out as somebody that has the ability to dominate hitters in the postseason with big stuff. Daysville is somebody that I'm hopeful can do that. Roldy Munoz is somebody that I'm hopeful can do that. Just big velocity, big stuff. We saw it with Roldy. I mean, the stuff is just incredible. Just don't always know where it's going. So the Braves have some young arms that have big stuff that could dominate hitters in the postseason like we've seen. It's just they need to continue fine-tuning that control. Not even command. It's just, can you control it enough to entice hitters to swing at it, to throw enough pitches in or near the zone to entice hitters to swing at your really good stuff. So the Braves have plenty of guys like that. They just need a little bit more tooling, a little bit more experience with mainly just their control. The stuff is great for those three guys that I just mentioned. Michael says, Cultured Geek says, what would make 2026 feel like a success for the Braves? Another division title, or does it have to be a deep playoff run at this point? I am still in the state that it's deep playoff run or bust for this team. Maybe I shouldn't have that mindset after what's happened the last two seasons, but I still feel like the Braves are in that window with this core that the goal should be, I mean, honestly, World Series or bust, but definitely making a deep playoff run. Now, after the last two seasons, just to get back and winning a division, I think would be good. Obviously, it'd be great. But Braves have done that. Like, you've done that with this core. You've won plenty of division titles. You've reached plenty of postseasons. I still think we're in that window where just making the postseason isn't enough. This group has been there. They've done that. It's still, for me, about a deep postseason run, getting to an NLCS, getting to a World Series, hopefully winning a World Series. That, to me, should still be the goal and the mindset for this team. But I can understand for some of you if that has shifted. Now, some people are just perpetually pessimistic and you think this team's going to stink every year. But I at least believe that this is still the mindset. This is still a team that should have aspirations of going deep into the postseason every season. Waldrop Splitter says there is a major block with both Drake and Sean at catcher. If we trade for a DH, do you think we would trade Sean Murphy? I don't think Sean Murphy's tradable right now. I don't think he's going to be traded this offseason. The injury that he's had, the performances he's had the past 2 years, I just think you'd be trading him at a very, very low value. So unless somebody just comes in and shocks you with a deal, because I've been on the board, on the train, whatever you want to say, I've been on it to keep both catchers. I think there's value in that and having two really good catchers. And so I'm not giving up Sean Murphy unless I'm getting something of value. And I just don't think you're going to get much of value for him if you try to trade him this offseason. He comes back next year. He and Drake Baldwin both look really good. You want to play one of them more. I would assume Drake Baldwin. You want to trade Sean Murphy at the deadline next year, maybe next offseason. I could see that happening, but not this offseason. I don't think it would happen this offseason. Dustin Mount says, what is your best guess on the amount of CBT money the Braves have to spend and was saving about 10 to 12 million for the trade deadline to get to the third tier of CBT based on the options, tendering contracts you think will be picked up, declined heading into the offseason? So I apologize, Dustin. I know you're an everyday of the podcast to put in some good questions. I did not look into the payroll right now for this upcoming offseason and kind of put the numbers together. I will say this. Right now, you look on FanGraphs, they have the estimated luxury tax payroll for next year for about 170 million, but that's not including, tendered players, team options being picked up, all of that. So, there's obviously that's going to be a higher number. The luxury tax threshold for next season will be 244 million. I believe will be that first tier, which means tier 3 will be 284 million. So I will say this. I think they're going to get about as close to that third tier as they need to. So if that third tier is 288 or 284 million, I think they're going to get close to 270 million for the luxury tax threshold, which again, based on where the payroll is right now, that's about $100 million. Now, again, there's still going to be team options picked up, players who are tendered, might be some players not tendered contracts. So that number is probably going to be a little bit higher. But I think there's going to be a lot of money to spend this offseason. I'm thinking optimistically, but knowing that 2 years ago they did that. 2 years ago, they went right up to the third tier of the tax, which is where you start getting into draft penalties, which is why I think they stopped there. So I think they're willing to go up to that amount, which gives them a good bit to work with. So again, I'm very optimistic that I think there's going to be a lot of money to spend this offseason. They're not going to spend wildly. I still don't think they're going to play at the top of the food chain, but I think they are going to spend a lot of money this offseason. All right, I got about 4 or 5 questions left to get to. Then maybe I'll be able to get to some in the comment section here as well, but we'll wrap things up here next. The NFL season is here, as well as the MLB postseason, and you got Major League or NBA starting up. You got NHL already underway. There's so many sports happening right now. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for all the action with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel allows you to play the way you like with player props, building same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Checking out FanDuel.com right now for Major League Baseball. The Blue Jays are a favorite here on Friday to take the lead in that series after coming back to even it up. And the Dodgers are heavy favorites to finish off the Brewers on a Friday night and go ahead and punch their ticket to the World Series, where they are obviously the heavy favorite to win it all once again. Who would have thought spending $1 billion would help you win a World Series? But that's exactly what the Dodgers are doing. You can see all those odds right there on FanDuel.com. Also, please make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Finishing up on the questions here. Next one from Bad News Barbs, who says, we all want the big bat, but say we are able to bring back Kim and or trade for a Josh Smith. We are able to address the rotation and pin. Can we live with a Lane Thomas ad to help with the lefties and platoon that DH or outfield spot with Fraley and others? Or is the bat a bigger need? So this is now getting to my title question in the third segment here, but the way I kind of wrap this question up is a big bat necessary this offseason? No, it is not. And that seems hypocritical from what I have previously already said this offseason, even before the offseason began. And I guess the offseason hasn't technically gotten underway just yet. But I do think a big bat is needed outside of just Ha-Seong Kim. Is it necessary to win a World Series? No, it's not. As I said earlier, I still think the mindset of this team is go deep in the postseason, win a World Series. I still believe in this core. I know I've been pretty pessimistic this past week on podcasts about Austin Riley, about Michael Harris, about Ozzie Albies. I've been pretty pessimistic about those guys, but I still think they're capable of being really good players. I still think Acuna can be an MVP level player. I still think Matt Olson is one of the best players in the game, one of the best hitters in the game. And as I said, I think Austin Riley can get back to being that if he's healthy. Drake Baldwin, the addition of him is obviously going to help a lot offensively. You get a Ha-Seong Kim, which is a scenario that we're talking about here. I think not having a black hole at the bottom of your lineup is definitely going to help. I'm very hopeful that Michael and Ozzie can't be nearly as bad as they were in the first half last year. And again, with the pitching staff, it's always going to be based on health. But if Chris Sale is healthy, he's an ace Cy Young contender. If Spencer Schwellenbach is healthy, he's an ace Cy Young contender. I'm hopeful that Spencer Strider can get back to where he previously was. And even if not, he's still a really good number 3 starter. We saw what we saw from Waldrop this year. Perhaps you get the return of Ronaldo Lopez, maybe even Grant Holmes. Look, those things need to happen, and that's what bad news says. You get Ha-Seong Kim, you address the rotation, you address the pin. Those are the bigger needs. And again, I'll do a whole podcast breaking down, what I think the priority of needs are. But for me, the priority is shortstop. That's got to be addressed. My second priority is the bullpen. I think you need 2 dominant arms. My third priority is the starting pitching. And then my fourth priority is to get a big bat. So that is the way that I rank them. And I think if you just did those top 3, I think this team could be fine next year. But you want to give them as good of a chance as possible to not just win next year and not just make the postseason. It would definitely help to have another big bat. But it's not necessary. If they went through this offseason and they only did those first 3 things, which is what you're pointing out here, I would still feel good about this team going into 2026. You do that 4th thing, and I'm through the roof. So again, it's not necessary. They don't have to do it. I think they should, and I think it would be great if they did. Whether it's a Kyle Tucker, a Bo Bichette, I don't know. I don't think they're going to play, at the top of the pool there. But maybe it's a trade for Byron Buxton. However you get that done, getting in a big bat to supplement this team, give it a little bit of jolt, I think could go a long, long way for this team reaching their goals. So don't think it's necessary, but I definitely think it needs to happen, if that makes any sense. Chuck McMillan says, is Jackson Holiday untouchable? Could he be an option at shortstop? The Orioles need pitching, and there isn't much pitching in their farm. Let's start with Elder and Fuentes. What else does it take? I still think he's going to cost a lot. I don't know that he's untouchable. I don't know what the Orioles are doing, quite honestly. So I don't have a good feel on where that franchise is. They're obviously looking for a new coach this offseason too. I do think Jackson Holiday probably is a second baseman. He's still just 21. Obviously, the numbers haven't looked great so far at the big league level, but I do think he's a second baseman, so I don't know that he's a shortstop. Even last year at second base, and again, this is metrics, so take them for what you will, but a -8 outs above average at second base last year, with a real, kind of lack of range. So I do think he's probably a second baseman long-term. And I do think it would probably still take a good bit to acquire him from the Orioles. Adam McLaughlin says, how is Michael Harris not at least a Gold Glove finalist? Is his outs above average hurt by his lack of throws out? Do all the metrics factor much higher than the eye test? Do you think they should go back to awarding the best 3 overall outfielders versus 1 from each position? Here's the thing. I'm a defensive person. You all know this if you have been an everydayer for any amount of time. You know how much I love the defensive side of things. It's just not going to be fair anyway. Unless you can watch every player every night, you're not going to have a good feel of how good a player actually is. We can look at these metrics and they're nice because it at least gives us something tangible to point to. I still just don't completely buy into the metrics more than I do the eye test. I said that for years with Dansby before the metrics actually caught up to him. You watch Dansby as a kid. I remember watching him at Vanderbilt. It's just the IQ is off the charts. And Dansby doesn't have the highest skills either necessarily, but he's just a high IQ player. He knows how to make the right plays. And that doesn't always show up in the data. So it's kind of a fool's errand to some degree to try to figure all of this out. So I don't know the best way to do it. I do think Michael Harris is a great center fielder. It's also center field is where you're putting your best defenders. So it's a very tough place to kind of compete for these awards. And again, I don't get to watch every team every single night. So it's hard for me to say, does so-and-so deserve it more than Michael Harris does. And I don't know I didn't even look to see who the finalists were for center field. But just looking at fielding run value, Pete Crow Armstrong at 21, Jacob Young at 15, Victor Scott at 12, Brenton Doyle at 11. That's 4 guys right there. And Michael Harris is all the way down at 7. So just based on, fielding run value on Baseball Savant, Michael Harris ranked 12th out of all center fielders this year. That's American and National League. And he had a range grading of 8. He had a -1 arm rating, but Victor Scott was -3 in that. Pete Crow Armstrong was 3. So it's not like any of the center fielders necessarily had great arms. I think it was more so just range. But again, anybody who watches Michael Harris on a daily basis, he has great range. There are balls he gets to that I have no idea how he gets to them. I'm thinking off the bat, there's no way he gets to that ball deep into right center field, and he does. So again, it's just tough because most guys or most of these people making these decisions on who's a Gold Glove finalist, all they can really do is look at these metrics. And again, I think these metrics are flawed. And also, you're putting your best defensive player in center field. So it's just a really hard group to go up against because there's a lot of really good center fielders. Pete Crow Armstrong is a really great defensive center fielder, although he was making me laugh in the postseason when he was trying to jump and rob baseballs that were 30 feet up on the wall there in Milwaukee. But there's a lot of really good defensive center fielders. I think Michael Harris is one of them. But again, just based on the metrics, which is what most people are going to look at when putting these finalist lists together, he wasn't, as close to some of those other guys. So, it's just it's really hard. Evaluating defense is still really hard, even with all the metrics and everything we have in today's game. Chris1414 says, what would you think of a trade package with Cam Caminiti and Owen Murphy for Joe Ryan? And how about signing Brad Keller for a closer? That feels like a high price to me for Joe Ryan. I don't know how many years of control he is under. And that probably means that the deal is about fair, what it should be. But I don't think the Braves are going to trade Cam Caminiti. I think they're planning on him being kind of a stud for them and maybe not even the not too distant future. According to the Baseball Reference, Joe Ryan under control through arbitration for 3 more seasons, 26, 27, or no, 2 more seasons, 26 and 27. So, that feels like a high price for 2 guys that I think that are going to be very good pitchers and maybe even the not so distant future. So I don't know that I would pay that price. I do think the Braves need to go to the Twins and ask about Pablo Lopez, ask about Joe Ryan. But if that is the price, I feel like that's maybe a little bit too high for me. Bill Tyler says, which, if any, international free agents do you think the Braves could pursue? I've started to see a few articles pop up about some Japanese players linked to MLB teams. Braves just usually aren't in those conversations. I know Murakami, I think, is posting this year. That's going to be one of the bigger names. It's just, for whatever reason, right or wrong, that those players only seem to go to a certain, I don't think demographic is the right word, but certain location on the West Coast, I guess you could say. And the Braves just never really seem all that involved in those conversations. So I doubt it. It's one of those things, and until it actually happens, I'm not really even gonna give it much consideration. Rex Green says, should they go after Kim, or do we think his asking price will be over his ability? That's free agency. You're gonna pay whatever the market demands. And if he goes to this market and he's one of the best shortstops out there, even if he's a below average hitter for his career, he might get 20 million. And that's probably going to be more than his actual talent level, but it's what the market price is. So I think you're probably gonna have to pay a little bit. Steven says fans should temper expectations. Anthopoulos isn't going to do much this winter. Then he's not going to be here much longer. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe that's what you think should happen. Sounds like maybe you don't like Anthopoulos. I do. And I think it's going to be a big winner. It has to be a big winner. He has to do, and I'm going to say he has to do a lot, but he has to take care of at least those 3 things. Last winter, he took care of one thing, and that one thing got suspended 2 games into the season. So he's got to address at least those 3 issues that I mentioned: shortstop, bullpen, starting pitching. If those are not addressed, I will be very, very angry going into next season. But I feel like at the very least, he's going to address those 3 things. And if he puts the cherry on top with a big bat as well, we're going to be dancing this offseason. So I think that is definitely going to happen. Regular 2 says 22 mil per year, I think, is the over under. And if it gets to that point, I think he's gone. But I think if it stays in the $16 to $20 million range, I think the Braves would be willing to pay that for how much hurt they really need a shortstop, which goes back to one of the first podcasts I did this offseason about why maybe they should have tried to play a ball a little bit more with Dansby Swanson, but I won't rehash that because some people didn't like that conversation. But that would do for this episode of Locked On Braves, as was in here, Wriggler, Steven, Rex. Appreciate you all joining live on today's podcast and all your comments. Azul in here as well, Andrew, Chandler, Scott, Bingham, William, Colvin. Appreciate you all joining live. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.